Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to In the Zone. Special guest today, Ken Stomsky, the legendary Ken Stomsky. We're fortunate to have Ken today. Pete is in Nashville on vacation, having a good break. Pete deserves it. He works really, really hard over here and bouncing around in all different places. So it's good for Pete to get down in Nashville and do some honky tonk, I guess. I don't know what they do down there, Kenny, but I
Yeah,
hope
he likes to go to those local places and listen to music.
yeah, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. He's engaged also, so I remember that year of being engaged as well. So it's a very, very cool year, and we wish Pete a really good vacation, and we'll see him when he gets back. Ken is in this week, and we're going to bounce out right away with our NBA fish. The NBA right here, the NCAA right here. All we do is talk about basketball here. We are hoops, 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We just love basketball here. The fans that have been following us, we want to thank you. Our zoners are really right there for us every week. Our numbers on YouTube and our numbers in other places, and continue people to watch our show and listen to us on the radio. This is our 72nd show, and I wanted to thank everybody who's watched us and just given us a chance, to come into your life a little bit. We really, really appreciate it. But also, this has been so much fun and really, really cool. This has been like really exciting for me. So every week to come in here on Thursday, we come in here on noon, and I got to be honest with you folks, today is September 12th, and it is absolutely gorgeous out there. It's approaching 80 degrees. Beautiful and sunny, and we're projected to have that for a little bit of time with us, so that's absolutely awesome. Before we jump into any basketball, though, I did want to, because I know some people back home, some friends back home, wanted to, in the passing of 9/11 yesterday, as years and years go by, it was very interesting to me as I turned to some people that I have in my life and a much younger group of people sometimes when I speak to them. I asked, did they even remember the time of 9/11? Did they ever remember it? And I think that's a good thing, that it will have a group of generation of people that it's no longer in their consciousness. And I think that's a good thing. But it's also important to have a practice of remembrance. And yesterday, 9/11, it just always hits me a little bit hard because I had just moved here and I was, obviously having a lot of family, a lot of friends back home when that happened. And it was just a day of just a terrible day for everybody. But when people talk about an American spirit, and when people talk about the great American fortitude that's in this country, that helped build this country, and we say that some of it might be missing and some of it might be. I just wanted to share a quick story with some of you, and it's a sad story, but I'm going to share you just to start off the day with it because it's an important story as well. I used to bartend in a bar back home, and I had a friend of mine. And his name was Tom. And Tom and I used to bartend, and I used to call him Tap Dancer because although the bar we worked in could be a little rough at times and the clientele wasn't always the nicest, he was a tap dancer, and he could get people to calm down, and people are having bad days, and he would just offer up a drink and just settle everybody down in this most beautiful of way, in a way that I could never do as a bartender, And he was just a great guy. He was a fireman also, and we both had jobs. I was teaching and coaching, and we'd meet on Friday night and do our stuff and earn a little extra money, And he was just a great, great human being. And for the longest time, he had some struggle with his wife of having children. And they would just always, as I would see him on Friday, they're always trying something new and really working hard. It was just a strong, strong desire to have children. And back then in our neighborhood, that was, completely something that was understandable, And so I came in on a Friday. I was running a little bit late because we got stuck at practice. And there was a bottle of champagne that was sitting on the bar. And this was anything but a champagne bar. I didn't even know if we had a bottle in the whole restaurant. He had to have brought it with him. And it was in this nice little canister. And I said, Tommy, what's going on? And he says, we're going to have twins. Finally, after all the time and effort and everything that went into that and the blessing that came, they were going to have twins. The twins were born. And then 9/11 came, and Tom was a first responder. The buildings had been hit. At that time, at that moment, him and his entire group probably knew that they were not going home to their families at that time. They knew that this act of bravery that they were about to commit was something extraordinary, but it was going to impact their lives in ways that people can't even imagine still to this day. Mm-hmm. And I think that as it passes, I just want us to practice remembrance, because that's the American spirit. That's the American value set. We don't always get it right. We're not always on the right side, but we try to turn it and we try to get it right. And that's the great thing about this country. And as we remember the people of 9/11 who lost their lives, we can remember them as heroes.
There's a whole generation here now at the Tech Academy who did not witness that.
They were born without it. They were born without it. That's a good thing. Okay, now we're going to move on and get into our basketball stuff. All right, this is the great NBA schism that we've been talking about, folks. The NBA right now has an unbelievably split split standings, if you will. You have a situation where you have some really, really good teams that have superstars and are loaded. And then you have some teams that are really, really struggling. Their franchises are in significant disarray. And right now, it's so difficult with everybody performing like they are, having a fairly strong middle as well in the NBA. The teams that have gone and are really, really in a bad spot are finding it very, very difficult to get out of that spot. We're going to talk about that a little bit also later in the show. But right here, here's what I'm talking about. Just based on last year. You had the Celtics run away. The Celtics ran away and hid with it, and they were unbelievably number one. Pete and I do a Super 15 every single week. The Celtics did not spend a week, I do not believe, where they were not number one in the Super 15. The entire season. Unbelievable accomplishment with Coach and his team, but also a really, really fun team to watch as well. I love Holiday, Tatum, Brown, unbelievable representatives, and we've already gone out on a limb and said you're going to see a different Jason Tatum now after the snub that occurred in the Olympics. I'm going to call it now, and I said it before. He was MVP of the NBA in this upcoming year. Now you have them at 64-18. Now you have the Detroit Pistons on the complete flip side of 14-68. You have the Thunder, really, really well-positioned team right now. Everybody in Boston's excited about the Celtics, and well, they should be. I've given them a couple of things to talk about on the show here that they could be concerned about. One of the things they need to be concerned about is the offseason moves of the 76ers. Obviously made some great pickups in this offseason and are poised to make a good run if they stay healthy. You've also got the New York Knicks, who made some offseason moves as well. They'll return Julius Randle. They'll add Mikal Bridges, but they gave up an awful lot in some of that as well, and that's what we're here to talk about. The team right now that I see that's best positioned to challenge the Celtics right now are the OKC Thunder, because of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and because of the amount of first-round draft picks that they have coming up. We're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, but there are several teams right now that have absolutely stockpiled draft picks, and they are now going to dominate the first round of the NBA draft in a way that hasn't been seen in a really long time. Now, there are some consideration also there that there could be some trades that occur. They may shake out of some of those picks as well. But there's several teams here that are unbelievably well-positioned, but none better than the OKC Thunder that I can see right now. Some of the other teams that are very well-positioned, the Nets, the Spurs, some of those teams as well, but they're way, way, way down there. Right now, OKC is one of the best teams, predicted to be maybe the number one team in the Western Conference this year, and they're loaded with first-round picks. They've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have Chet Holmgren. They have a really good, young, dynamic lineup right now with the amount of draft picks that they have to add. This is why, in the zone, I say they're positioned to be one of the better teams. And if the Celtics fans want to know who to watch out for over on the West Side, watch out for that OKC organization because they're getting it done and they're getting it done right. You have the Nuggets. They were 57. The Thunder were 57 and 25. So were the Nuggets. At the bottom here, we're talking about the Spurs, 22 and 60. The Hornets, 21 and 61. The Blazers, 21 and 61. Those are the disparities that I talk about in the league. You also have a couple of teams that used to be blue blood in the NBA that have also kind of slipped off that blue blood status for sure, and now are kind of mids, and you don't know, how they get back. And each franchise poses several different problems, but I'll give you several of the teams that I'm talking about. The Lakers aren't what the Lakers used to be, haven't been for some time. The Warriors aren't what the Warriors used to be, haven't been for some time now. The Spurs are certainly not the Spurs of Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker. They certainly haven't been for some time now. And so that kind of middle that used to be the middle, the Chicago Bulls, you can add them to that mix as well. That middle that used to be the NBA, that's in there now, that used to be the NBA royalty at different times. The Detroit Pistons for a while were NBA royalty, and now they are the absolute last franchise in all of the NBA. That team right there and the Wizards right next to them are the two worst franchises in the entire NBA. It's a little staggering to see what's happened, but that's what we've been talking about with the Great Schism. Now, Adam Silver acknowledges that the NBA, in addition to having what we just talked about as having a group of people that have and a significant group of people that have not, the NBA is considering expansion. And the expansion that they're talking about is they're saying we're not ready yet, but they are thinking about expanding. And the two most suitable franchises, Kenny, you might like this one, but Las Vegas. Las Vegas is a thought of destination, and also Seattle. I don't, for the life of me, understand the Seattle thing because the OKC Thunder used to be the Seattle Supersonics. The Seattle City had a franchise. They let it go. It went out to Oklahoma City, and now they're doing great out there, but now they want to say, well, we want to try again and have another franchise. I just don't know how all that works. Also, I don't know stadium-wise where both of those places are at. I don't know where they would play, because out there in Vegas, you probably have to maybe construct something, or there is something out there maybe that's doable, but you also back in Seattle, their arena would be years and years old, so I'm not sure. The Lakers, all the Lakers this year, great news. The Lakers are going to all wear number 44 on their jersey to commemorate the great, unbelievable career of Jerry West, both as a player, general manager, coach. The guy did it all. Angel Reese, we're going to bounce into the WNBA for 1 second. Angel Reese, unfortunately, out with a season-ending injury. And that's going to be difficult for her team as well because she was playing extremely well, averaging a double-double in consideration for Rookie of the Year. We had considered that Caitlin Clark kind of had it locked up, we thought, as Rookie of the Year, and certainly this is not going to do anything that has anything to change that. We think Caitlin Clark now will have it locked up and good to go. All right, here's what we're talking about with some of this stuff that with all of these draft picks. A number of years ago, AKC received 5 first-round draft picks and got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for Paul George. And these are the picks that they're holding on to right now. The Clippers had Paul George, and now he winds up with the 76ers. But all of those picks are still with Oklahoma City. The Rockets, the Jazz, the Spurs, and the Nets have 22 first-round picks, 7 years of pick swaps, minimum 3 first-rounders each, and San Antonio has 4. Unbelievable. You're seeing some of these teams try and do what OKC has done. They know they're not very good right now. The Nets and the Spurs, they're stockpiling picks. The Spurs have 4 first-rounders. That'd be really interesting to see. If they have kind of another subpar year and finish, way down, they're going to have a chance to be a lottery pick, and they're also going to have a chance to get a marquee player to play with Victor Wembanyama. So if you're looking at next year's draft, which they seem to be poised at with 4 first-rounders, there are 4 really, really good players in that draft. So if they're thinking about, this is our time, this is the Spurs move, then this is well-timed, well thought out, and the organization deserves credit for this because they're going to have all of these picks coming up, and now you're going to have, I think, maybe the best draft selection in the entire last bunch of years, last 10 years, this is going to be one of the better drafts for sure, in my opinion. You've got a lot of great players in there. We're going to run through some of them later in the show, but also just a lot of depth to the draft as well. So if you have 4 first-round picks and Victor Wembanyama, and you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet Holmgren already, and now you're heading into this draft pick, that's going to have Cooper Flagg, VJ Edgecombe, Dylan Harper, Arius Bailey. I mean, it's going to be a monster draft. It's going to be incredible. And I think that these teams right now, if they're sitting like we think they're sitting, they're gonna be poised to really eat up this draft and really get some good players. Gary Payton, they called him the glove when he played basketball. He is going to be the coach of the College of Alameda, which is a small school right outside of Oklahoma. He had coached previously, and he was also a great basketball player, great Oregon State, I believe, and also an NBA player for a long time. And he was on an NBA championship team with the Miami Heat. Going into this year, you got a couple of coaches, I think, that are on the hot seat. We're going to give them to you right here. I think Billy Donovan with the Bulls has to do, a little bit better. 152 and 162 with the Bulls. I think they got to do a little bit better. And they also got to do a little bit better with their movements, with their trading and with their drafting. Steve Kerr with the Warriors, he's certainly got his accomplishments done, but they haven't done it in a while. And one of the reasons I'm putting him on this list is because of what he did to Jason Tatum. Ty Lue with the Clippers, possible because the Clippers have absolutely almost vacated their roster. Paul George is gone. Westbrook is gone. They have Harden back, but they have a lot of pieces that are missing over there. They're going to bring Kawhi Leonard back, I assume, but that's, there's not a lot of pieces there. They finished pretty well last year, but they have some ones that are missing. Doc Rivers with the Bucks. Doc Rivers gets hired. Doc Rivers gets fired. Might be a point in time when Doc Rivers has gotten to coach every NBA team out there. And Mike Budenholzer with the Suns. I think the Suns think they should be better than what they are, but the free agency effect here is real because some of these movements that happened, and we're going to talk about it right this second, is Paul George moving to the 76ers. Boom. That's huge. That's huge. He's a great player that can walk right in there, and it's a piece that fits right to what they have. They have Tyrese Maxey. They have Joel Embiid. Now you're sliding in one of the best pieces, right, that you could possibly get to fit there. And also added Andre Drummond at the same time. I've talked about Andre Drummond being a little bit more of a piece than people think there. He's going to be terrific for them, I think, also. Now, Klay Thompson was with the Golden State Warriors. And we've been a little bit rough on Klay Thompson on the show because as we've said many times, Klay turned to Klay. And he wasn't shooting the ball well, which is what he does. He's a spot shooter, and the ball wasn't going down. And when you put all your eggs in one basket as a basketball player, we talk about this as coaches all the time, develop another skill set, be able to do other things out on the floor besides doing something that only relies on you standing still and shooting the ball from the outside. Because when you live by the jump shot, you have a tendency to also die by the jump shot. And so Klay Thompson moving over to Dallas, let's hope the change in latitude and longitude creates some aptitude and some better shooting because right now Klay isn't getting it done. Lonnie Walker being picked up by the Celtics. He was with the Brooklyn Nets. I kind of like this pickup. He's mercurial a little bit, but he has some talent and could fit in there. I think the Celtics, one of the problems the Celtics is going to have right now is maintaining a roster because they have such a loaded roster right now. There's not a lot of room to move young players in and out. They have such a really strong depth of team. Congratulations to Brad Stevens, the general manager. Whatever that guy seems to touch seems to turn to gold. Brad Stevens, great, unbelievable job. Right now their team is so loaded, so packed, it's difficult to find room for new players. They're talking about a guy who I think I don't know if this is going to happen or not, but they're talking possibly about Baylor Shearman, and Jordan Walsh splitting time back between the G League. Where I think Shearman's going to be good, I don't know. He shoots it too good not to keep him up there, I think. Tyus Jones went from the Wizards to the Suns. That could be a piece that helps the Suns. I don't know. Russell Westbrook went from the Clippers to the Jazz. I've always liked him as a player. I really have. He's just been in a lot of cities, and when you've been in a lot of cities, that just means people really don't like to have you around that much. Reggie Jackson from the Hornets to the 76ers. Another good pickup for the 76ers because he can shoot it. All right, so we wanted to give you this Baylor Shearman, a little bit of Baylor Shearman stuff because we were I was a little surprised when they said possibly, he might spend some time in the G League. I don't know. But I just, I think he's a pretty good player. And here's a couple of things that he was a quarterback in high school, Kenny. He played for Aurora High School, 4,000 yards and 59 touchdowns. That's not bad. State title. Harold Eugene Edgerton is also from his small town of Aurora, Nebraska. And he went to MIT, Kenny. And somehow I see Pete Coles back in the day out on a disco floor shaking it with a strobe light that was invented by Harold Eugene Edgerton, also from Aurora, Nebraska, like Baylor Shearman. He scored 1,000 points in multiple schools.
Coles isn't a dancer.
I can see him out there. I'm going to disagree. Back in the day, I could see him out there. He's got a little brim hat on, moving around the dance floor. I could see it. I can see it. 1,000 points at South Dakota State and 1,000 points at Creighton. He scored 1,000 points at two different schools. 2,233 points. Baylor Shearman, 1,114 at South Dakota State. Now, you're in South Dakota State. You love basketball. You got to be out there because, it's 45 below on your way to practice. All right? And then he gets to Creighton, and he thought that was a reprieve when he got to go to Creighton because that's Nebraska, and it's only 25 below when you have to go to practice. And so he out there put down 1,119 points, an unbelievable accomplishment. He's a very good shooter of the basketball, probably, I thought, the best in the draft. That's why I think he sticks. But also, I think he makes very good basketball decisions, and I think that's why he sticks. But I'm going to give you the last reason why he sticks. He leads Division I in defensive rebounding. That's incredible. I want to go back and double-check that stat, but this is since 99-2000. Dates back 25 seasons. Armando Bacot from North Carolina is second. That's unbelievable. All-time rebounder of all time was a gentleman played in the old days by the name of Tom Gola. I'm going to give you some other great rebounders here, folks, that were unbelievable players and also really, really good names that you'll know. Robert Parrish went to Centenary. He's number 4 on the list. He was a long-time Celtics basketball player, a center for the Celtics, also known as the Chief. And I think if you wanted to give Robert Parrish an accolade, you would say that he ran the floor better than any big man has ever run the floor in the NBA. Up and down that floor, he was constantly beating his man down the floor and getting baskets and layups just because he kept running that floor hard. I remember him, and I liked the Chief very, very much. Paul Silas, another Celtic, who I thought, I didn't see a whole lot of him, but I thought, he might have been one of the best rebounders in the entire time of all basketball. A great, great rebounder. When they say rebounders, this guy had a nose for the basketball. He would go after it, everything he thought was his rebound. Unbelievable. Bill Russell, San Francisco, unbelievable. Paul Silas played at Creighton, by the way, also. That's interesting. Marvin Barnes of Providence was number 16. Timmy Duncan was number 17. Okay. Interesting stuff. Really interesting stuff. All right. So here's a little bit of the current 25 that we see that could be in the draft, in the top 10. We're going to give you our top 10. There's, a list of 25 players out there. We picked out all of the international players out of there because there's a lot of them, and they're from all different places. And it seems like our guys are playing against the world right now, but let's just get through that anyway. Here's some players that they have as possibly being number 1, number 2. We're all over the draft board here, but here's 10 players that are going to be in the NCAA this year that they're talking about as being very, very highly drafted. Okay, number 1. And we've talked about this gentleman a lot. He's from the state of Maine. Cooper Flagg, the freshman going into Duke. An awful lot of hype about this young man. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him. I think he'll respond, but to be the number 1, that's something else. Nolan Traore from France. I took out some of the international players, but he's been over here a bit as well. Dylan Harper from Rutgers. Really, really great shooter of the basketball and has great lineage as well. Ace Bailey, Rutgers. Rutgers has a 1-2 punch right there. That's unbelievable. Both freshmen, both top 10 players in everybody's recruiting analysis, and just really, really going to be excitement all over Piscataway, all over Jersey. It's going to be unbelievable there this year, I think. VJ Edgecombe at Baylor. He's very, very high. Trey Johnson from Texas. A lot of people like him. I think you're going to have Kaman Malak. People are going to talk about him a lot, the big man out at Duke. He has got some size and really, really good mobility. I think you would have him, if you had your draft board already, you're probably going to see him somewhere in the top 15. We'll see how he goes. But I think this draft is loaded. He might push down a tiny little bit. They have Liam McNeely from Connecticut. Husky fans, be on the alert. They're talking about one and done with your guy Liam McNeely. He's terrific, very, very good basketball player. Going to have a monster year for Connecticut. I just don't know about a one and done. I would see him maybe sticking around a little bit. We'll have to see. And then you have Drake Powell from North Carolina and Colin Murray Boyles at South Carolina. Some really good names there. I think that a lot of times what we love doing in the zone is finding those guys that they missed on. We went back, and again, we told you Trace Jackson Davis in 58 was crazy. Jamie Jaquez, we told you he was going to do very, very well. We also picked Zach Edey to be number 1 this year, and we'll stand by that because most projections right now have the big man, the big Z, going out as Rookie of the Year. I will say one thing to Mr. Edey: you can't bite on every block shot or you're going to wind up getting hurt again. He sprained his ankle in the combine a little bit. Got to be careful. But here's some other names that I'm going to throw out for you that are certainly going to be on our draft board if they show. You never know what's going to happen with some of these players. They might have good years, and they may, because of the NIL, be a little more comfortable and make better draft decisions. But I think if some of these players come out, it's going to really, really load up the draft board to a level that hasn't been seen in a number of years. So I really like Derek Queen from Maryland. He's big. He's very, very strong around the basket. He's the little baby Shaq almost, where if he gets it around the basket, it's a dunk. He's going to play with Julian Reese this year, who's an upperclassman, but also somebody that I probably would have as a first-round pick on our draft board as well. So I'm keeping an eye on Derek Queen down there at Maryland. I'm keeping an eye on Kevin Willard and his team down there at Maryland. They're in the Big Ten. I think they're one of the teams in the Big Ten with Indiana that can rise and really, really make some noise this year. They've got some great young talent there. Jaleel Bethea, Miami. One of the reasons I think Jaleel Bethea is going to have a marquee kind of year, he's kind of NBA ready right now, with his athleticism, the decision-making, the ball handling. He can do a lot of different things, and he's got really good size and physicality to him. What I would say here is also, this Miami roster is a little depleted. They've lost a lot of people, Norshort Armir, Wooga Poplar. They've just lost a lot of people that were on the roster, and I don't know that they have filled them. I think that's going to be something that's amenable to Bethea having a good career, though. I think that's going to be a positive for him because he's going to be relied on a whole lot more. I like Samson Johnson, folks. I really like this young man down in Connecticut. He is long, lean, runs, can block shots, can dunk around the basket. Got to obviously improve his skill set. But this is something we talked about on In the Zone, and we've talked about it quite a bit. When you have an NBA center skill set right now, it's a binary equation. And what I mean by that is the center position is either one of two things right now. And either you're a block shot, high ball screen guy, or you're a stretch guy who's trying to space the floor so your other players can get at the basket. Okay, you can shoot the basketball from away from the basket. This guy is in category A. He's going to block shots. He's going to high ball screen. He's going to roll and get dunks. He's going to create a defensive presence and rebound on the other side. But right now, his offensive game isn't quite where you would like to have it to say he'd be an NBA star, but I think he's going to develop well and do well. I think Oumar Ballo, there's some good bigs this year. I'll give you a couple of bigs right here in a row that people aren't really talking about that I think are really, really solid. Oumar Ballo went from Arizona to Indiana. Coach over there is going to do a good job with him. He's got an NBA background. I think they're going to do well. Mackenzie Mabako, they've got some other players in there as well, but Ballo's huge. He's a huge addition there. He's also huge. 7 foot, legit 7 foot. Cliff Amourier going over to Alabama. They're going to team up with Mark Sears, who's obviously one of the 1, 2, 3 best players returning in the entire country. And now you're adding a NBA /center. He's going to block shots. He's going to set ball screens. He's going to get out there. He's not going to be out shooting threes, not going to be out stretching the floor with his shooting ability, which is really how Alabama made their bread and butter last year. So that's going to be an interesting thing. That's going to come up as one of the questions that we have in this kind of ESPN thing. They had a lot of questions. One of the questions that they added was they think Alabama's going to be very, very good. But you also now have Big Cliff, and you also have Grant Nelson. Last year, they were using those gentlemen as their centers who were stretching the floor as the NBA beat prototype, as a stretch guy who can take it away from the basket, shoot threes on his own, and also be involved in ball screens, but instead of in the roll on the ball screen, they're ball screen and flare. So they're going to set the screen, they're going to flare out and step out and shoot the three. And so that's really the binary equation. This guy fits in as on the A side, certainly, But you have Cliff Amourier. I'll give you a Johnny Broome, who's going to be a terrific big man. And on the draft board early, he decided to come back for Auburn, and he's going to lead Auburn to a terrific season this year, I believe. You got R.J. Davis. I don't know why. I guess I could tell you why, but I think that this is a miss, that he's not on anybody's draft board right now. I have him and Mark Sears as the number 1 and 2 players right now. And again, the season will prove this out. But I have right now, and I would say most, like-minded people would say, this guy is terrific, R.J. Davis, what he's done. You have Caleb Love. You have some other great players out there, Mark Sears, but he's in a category that's, certainly an elite category. He's played for North Carolina. He's back for his 5th year. He'll have amassed an amazing, amazing statistical career. And right now, I can't find him on anybody's draft board. I can't see him anywhere. And that's weird to me. I don't know why. I don't see a whole lot of Caleb Love on the draft boards right now, and he's an elite shooter. He's an elite shooter with good athleticism. I understand he's a bit undersized, but there could be a place for him. There could be a place for him because of his elite shooting ability. All right? You have Vlad Golden, moving from FAU, now moving over to Michigan, following his coach there. This guy's 7'2". He can run the floor. He can block shots. I'll give you Kalkbrenner as well, another 7-footer that can run and shoot. Kalkbrenner more of the B side. Vlad Golden on the A side. He's going to be a high ball screen guy. He's going to be a dunk guy. He's going to be a low post guy. Ian Jackson from North Carolina. This guy's from New York, where I'm from. He attended Cardinal Hayes and then went to a prep school as well. I'm excited to see this. This gentleman might be one of the best athletes. I would say him, Jalil Bethia, might be the 1 and 2 best athletes of these superstar players that we're seeing. And people are talking about him going pro. I'll have to see. And again, the aforementioned Kalkbrenner. All right, so I wanted to run this through you is that they have these things here, and they're asking these different questions of the way too early, what they call a WTE, a way too early top 25. Well, I got news for you, people. It ain't WTE anymore. We're in the middle of September. The first game is November 4th. Basketball practice generally starts somewhere in the early October period. So it's going to be clicking very, very soon here, folks. And we are going to have it for you and get it going. But to say we're in a way too early, I think we're beyond that right now. I think we're in the just right zone to be talking about top 25 teams in the NCAA. What do they bring? And here's a couple of questions that ESPN put out. And so they have Kansas ranked very, very high. And I'm excited about Kansas as well. But Kansas just had 2 really, really difficult injuries. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But it was Shaquille Moore just hurt himself, had a broken foot, and they had already lost Marco Jackson, which two guards that they were relying on for some depth. I think Kansas is still going to be pretty strong, but those two injuries right now have put them in a situation where they weren't as deep as they thought they were to begin the year. They've got some very good players. They'll be led by Hunter Dickinson. They'll have a chance to get up and be in the top. But I think when it's all said and done, they're going to have a difficult time, Kansas, with their depth right now. But he says, can they find the right perimeter combinations? And without those two gentlemen right there that are perimeter players, I think that the question to that answer is, can they find him? If anybody can, it's Bill Self. He certainly can find him, but I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. They have enough right now in their starting lineup, but I think that's going to impact their depth significantly. Alabama, the question they had was, can Alabama be as effective with a bigger lineup? With that bigger lineup, with adding Cliff Amorie from Rutgers in there, is that going to hurt? I think what it's going to do is, and to be very honest with you, I think Coach Oates does a great job on defense, and I think it's going to anchor their defense and make them even more difficult to score on and allow them to shoot up and free up a little bit more on the three-ball side. You're not going to get a ton of offensive productivity out of Cliff Amorie. He's going to block shots. He's going to rebound. And every team can use a guy like that. It's going to free up Grant Nelson and some of their other really good players, especially Mark Sears, going to free them up to score and do other things. The UConn Huskies. Here's a good question. This is a very good question. I'll give them credit on this. Hassan Diarra, can he move into the starting lineup, take the pressure, take the heat of trying to get this three-peat done, and can he take over this team that has absolutely lost both years maybe? Now you're counting, you've lost 7 NBA prospects off the roster. And so I get it. You have NIL, and they added Aiden Mahaney and Liam McNeely are really good additions to this team. And you have Alex Caravan back. There's a lot to be excited. Again, Samson Johnson. A lot of talent here, and Coach Hurley's operating on a different level right now. But can Hassan Diarra do it? Absolutely. Absolutely. You're going to be surprised when you see this young man. He cuts through defenses like butter. He makes very, very good decisions. One of the things that I think is with him is that he gets around people so easily and so fluidly. He's strong, physical. I think he's from New York City, so he's got some good shake. He's got some good moves. But I think one of the things right now is that he's very concerned about running this team and doing that where that might impact him a little bit in his decision-making. But Hassan Diarra can play, folks. He can play. Can Kelvin Sampson from Houston replace Jamal Sheed? No. You can't replace a player like that. You can hope to find somebody else, but you can't replace a player like that. Now, is that going to impact is a bigger question and a better question. Is that going to impact Houston? No, it's not. They'll always miss Jamal Sheed. Every coach wants Jamal Sheed on their team because he is a heart and soul of your team guy. He plays with his guts out on the floor, and he's a person that's passionate and shows his love, but also a leader, consummate team guy. No, you don't replace that. But if anybody's going to be able to go around it and build a bridge back, it's going to be Kelvin Sampson because he is cooking with gasoline as a coach right now. The Gonzaga Bulldogs, will they be better defensively when they lost their best defensive player? That's a good question. I am excited about this Gonzaga team. I always tease Pete that my wife hates it when I walk around the house and go, Gonzaga. But I really love Mark Few as a coach, and I'm really excited about this team right now. And they've added some pieces that are just going to fit, I think, very, very well. This Gonzaga team is going to have one of the best chances to take a run at the national title that any Gonzaga team has had in a while. I'm going to go out and say that on a limb. I'm going to get the people out there in Washington. I'm going to get them excited out there because they got a great coach, but you got a great team right now too. So are they going to be better on defense? Nobody on the West Coast plays defense. Nobody does. Nobody in the NBA plays defense anymore. It's going to be about, and the Celtics have defined that, it's going to be about who puts the ball in the basket the most times. It's kind of always been about that. But defense certainly is something that's not revered right now. The Baylor Bears, is there enough up front? They have great guards. They have great. I'm so excited to watch VJ Edgecombe this year. He is going to be an absolute breakout freshman, I believe, and I think maybe could turn out to be maybe the best freshman of all that they have there this year. And that's saying a lot because there's a loaded class right here. But I think, is there enough up front when you add North Shore to Amir? I believe you do have enough up front. I really do. And this is a team that I'm excited about. Baylor Bears, keep them on your lips, folks. They're going to be really, really good this year. Iowa State Cyclones. Will TJ Otzenberger's team find more offensive pop this season? Now, that I'm going to just go at the premise of that question a little bit. There have been very few teams in the NCAA as successful as Iowa State Cyclones. They've blown a lot of roofs off, all right? And so I don't understand why people care how that gets done. Iowa State's never had this level of success in their life. So why would you question the manner in which they're doing it? Will they get more pop this year? I think that's a silly question. They have great balance on offense and defense. This team is really loaded. This team is Cyclone ready, okay? And so to say that they need to have more pop, I mean, this was one of the best teams in the country last year. They're picked again to be one of the best in the country this year. They're in a rarefied air with Houston, with Purdue, with Connecticut. That was the 1, 2, 3 last year. They're creeping into that air there. And, this is Iowa State, folks. There's not a good basketball player within 400 miles of that campus. Cooper Flagg really be the best player in the country going into Duke? That's a great question also. The issue that I'm having here is that, they lost Jeremy Roach, who would have been ready to step up and really be a huge, huge component and leader of this team, and it would have taken a lot of the heat off Cooper Flagg. But in really, really unusual fashion for the Duke Blue Devils, their program went through some really, really significant attrition this year. And right now, I would say Cooper Flagg would have a chance, to walk in and be the sensation that he absolutely is. But I don't know that there's enough around him. And I don't mind saying that. Jeremy Roach going to Baylor and some of the other pieces that are missing of players that have been in the program for a while that you thought would have stuck with it and stayed in the program. They're having significant attrition issues right now. And although I do believe Cooper Flagg is going to be a knockout, I kind of see where that question is. I kind of see the validity of that question because I look at the rest of their roster. They do have the really good big man inside, but I don't know that their guard play is going to be able to sustain. We'll find out. All right. Can Arizona get rid of the March bugaboo? It's a question where, because right now the West Coast, there's a couple of teams that have it loaded up now. A lot of those teams also joined conferences like the Big Ten, the ACC. They're coming across the whole map now. And that's not as popular as one might think. It looks good on your balance sheet, but it doesn't always show up good with the classroom, with players who are interested in going to school and really having that experience, to be away from home all that time, to be away in hotel rooms and all these different places. Trying to keep up with your studies, it's not easy. So if you have serious-minded students, and there are many that go into college in the ranks, you're going to have a situation where, they're going to want to not be traveled all over the country. So now it leads Arizona and some other teams that are out there by themselves. And, they have gotten hooked up in the NCAA tournament, and to be honest with you, with a lot better teams than they have right now. And so maybe they'll have some better flow, but they've done a good job of pushing some players into the NBA. So it means obviously they've had some great talent, but they get bounced. The good news is they have Caleb Love back, and he's one of the best players in the country. So if you can build off of that, it's always in the NCAA. Do you have that one great player that you can build off, or do you have a class of players that you can build off? But you need a foundation, and I think Arizona having Caleb Love back is a good foundation. Not bad. North Carolina Tar Heels, this is a team I would say that I have as much question about as anybody. Obviously, Ian Jackson coming in as a freshman. You have Elliot Cadeau going to start at the point, and you're going to bring R.J. Davis in as the two guard. That's a bang-bang combination. I like it, but I don't know. Like I said, you have some pieces there, but is there enough? Is there enough? And will they be dominant down low as they have been in seasons past? I don't see that. They just lost way too much. Baycoat was a really big piece for them for a long time, second leading defensive rebounder of all time. So that's going to be difficult, I think, to make up front. And there's not a lot of great big men out there right now. There's some good ones that are established, but the young players this year just haven't been, there hasn't been a ton of that. We'll find out. And when they go to Auburn, is J.P. Pegues the answer at point guard? I think he's got, this is what we were talking about. This is the inverted argument of the Cooper Flagg argument. Does Cooper Flagg have enough guards or enough significant pieces around him to make that transition viable? Now we're talking about a young man coming into Auburn, and Auburn has Johnny Broome. They have some other really, really good pieces. I think that makes his success a little bit more obtainable, a little bit more viable. And so that's just a piece of what are you walking into? Who are you walking into it with? Those pieces are important. Texas A&M Aggies. I'll tell you what, they've said, can they find their groove early? Buzz Williams, I like Buzz Williams. I think he's a great coach. I think what he's done at Texas A&M in a little bit of short time has really, really been significant, and I think he's doing really good stuff out there. What I would say about this team, having Wade Taylor, the fourth back and one of the most prolific scorers in the country back, this team has, again, something foundational to build on. They could be really, really good. They have a good coach. They have a good culture. They have great players. And so I think they could be really, really good. But if Buzz Williams has a little bit of a different scheduling mindset than a lot of other coaches do. Some of these coaches are dipping their toe into the Baha Mar tournament and the Maui Invitational. And yeah, you might pick up some tough competition, but you're still in Maui. So nothing bad ever happens in Maui. You're on the beach, you're relaxing, the weather's beautiful. Yeah, you lost 2 games, but no big deal. You got some great television exposure. You come home and you get ready for your league. The group that's going in there at A&M, they're going into what I call a buzz saw. Buzz Williams set up the schedule, and it's rough. They're going to go out a couple of games. So if they get hit early and then go into their league schedule, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. Tennessee Volunteers, can they maintain the offensive uptick without the great Dalton Knecht, who is now with the Los Angeles Lakers? And to be honest with you, folks, it's more about Rick Barnes than it is about Dalton Knecht. They're going to reload. They're going to be very, very good. The standard, the culture at Tennessee is very strong right now because you have Rick Barnes. And so that's without saying. I think they're going to be fine. I think you're going to see Dalton Knecht in the NBA. He's going to do some good things, but you're also going to know that he was a beneficiary of having a really, really good college coach as well in that year where he transferred in. So the Arkansas Razorbacks, they ask a question here, and this is the John Calipari era that will kick off in Arkansas. Everybody excited to see what happens with this team in a very short time. Coach Calipari took the Arkansas roster, shook it up, and just threw it out, and came in with a bunch of transfers, his own people, and some guys that came in through the portal as well. But whether you like the way it was done or whether you don't like the way it was done, they've arranged a very, very good team here, possibly one of the best backcourts in the entire country. If you give consideration to the rating of Boogie Fland, who was a New York player, same school as R.J. Davis. You got to give him credit. At Arkansas, they got him. They also picked up John Well Davis, who was at FAU, played in a bunch of big playoff NCAA games, and has a ton of great experience under his belt. Also got to watch him play live against my St. Bonaventure Bonnies, and he's a terrific player, terrific college player. And I think now you have DJ Wagner. So the question is that, can they get this, get this thing moving quickly, do whatever. The question, there's more than one question about this Arkansas team. There's a lot of questions about this Arkansas team. But they're interesting questions. They're good questions. And if the change of scenery has been good for Cal, maybe they can get things turned around there. The Creighton Blue Jays, they want to know, does Greg McDermott replace 36 points per game? Wow. You lost Baylor Shearman, you lost Trey Alexander, and Not only that, you lose all of that historical program knowledge. People that been through the really difficult league games with you. They've played UConn, they've played Villanova, they've played some really, really good teams. Can you replace that? I think it's a little easier to do in the NIL and the portal situation right now, but I think that's going to be difficult to replace. But I don't think the Big East is going to be that tough this year, so they might be able to slide by. You have Purdue next. What does it look like without Zach Edey? It looks like you just missed a 7'5" guy. It looks like there's 7'5" missing from your lineup. A gentleman who averaged a significant double-double, was a dominant player, back-to-back Wooden Award winner. How do you replace that? You don't. They're going to try with another 7-foot-plus player of Daniel Jacobson. So they're going to stay with the big center route and go after it, but they also have some really good players on that team. I think they'll be fine. Indiana Hoosiers, okay? Mike Woodson, can you get all the pieces to fit? Can they get the pieces to fit? Because they did move and they did groove a little bit in this offseason. They have Malik Reneau. They have Mackenzie Mabako. They have added Umar Ballo. That's a very, very talented lineup. They have Keenan Carlisle as well, who came in from Stanford. That's one that kind of slid under the radar. People were talking about him being a first-round draft pick last year. Really didn't have the year at Stanford that I saw, that I thought would take it, especially on the defensive end. But he's going to come into a new climate here, a new understanding, and that's another gentleman that's here that can really, really help this team. Cincinnati Bearcats, is Jizzle James' late-season surge a sign of things to come? You can always take those late season surges as something good, but then you have to also understand that great players are generally built in the summer. And so what was his off-training program? What was his time spent away from it? And what are the habits? What is the scheduling? What is the system? What is the sequencing? And that's what these young players got to really start to get into. The competition is unbelievably fierce out there to be a great player. And if you're 6'5" and under, you're going to have a skill set that is on the top level of skill sets out there, because it's unbelievably competitive right now. Jizzle James is going to be just fine. Ole Miss, will they start to play Chris Beard's defense? Sometimes what happens, I think anyway, is that you have all of this stuff that's algorithmically run. How do you get to the top 25? You run the algorithm. How do you get to who's the best player? You look at all of these offensive and defensive efficiencies, and you come up with a number and you go, he's the best, But at the end of the day, some of this is subjective. And at the end of last year, I was looking at Ole Miss's program. They really fell off at the end because they're in the SEC, and this was his first year, moved over there very, very quickly. But that was a really good story last year that I think people didn't really look at because of the circumstance in which he left Texas. And so there was a little bit of a blow up while he was at Texas that led him to leave almost right in the beginning. He winds up scrambling, getting the Mississippi job and doing well. But they were a really good story last year as far as they were one of the best teams in the country. Obviously, their schedule was loaded with cannolis, loaded with cupcakes. But at the end of the day, they were winning games and they were doing really, really well in their first year. So if there's anything, I think the gentleman coaches pretty well, and I think they're going to be able to move. I think they are. Florida Gators, Walter Clayton's one of the best players in the country, hands down. I think he's going to be an unbelievable NBA draft player as well to look at. They're building around him. He's a franchise, but I love the way they're running this program as well. I really, really like what they're doing, and I think that they're going to be a program integrity group, and they're going to stay with things. And I think that's kind of the honest car mechanic move right now. Stay with integrity. Stay on the line. Keep your program moving along with good, solid freshmen that you can sign. Now you have money to buy whoever you want. So you can always buy somebody in the portal if you want, but if you don't remain with the program integrity and keeping your players in the program who know what your offense is, who know what your defense offense is, who know what your training methods are, who want to go to class a little bit. If you don't have that culture built and you keep on turning away from that culture, you're going to have problems. I say this to all of the young coaches out there, D1 coaches. A lot of these guys are out there and they're a little bit scared right now because they don't know which way to go. A lot of them didn't get that NIL budget money, and a lot of them, are getting muscled for players all the time now because every time you pick up the phone, you're just hearing different numbers that are outside of the number that you can probably afford to pay. It's just the same old cycle that's gone on for a while, but now they've institutionalized it. They've made it systemic, and that's a whole different place. So these coaches are out there scrambling, doing different things with their schedule, doing different things to just try and stay anywhere in the system of relevance, and it's difficult. And I feel, exactly some of that. And so what I say is just always go back to program integrity. Stay with what's always worked and keep your players moving up from freshman to sophomore to junior. By the time they're juniors and seniors, they're going to be ready. They're going to be good. And you're going to be able to get really good players who are going to want to buy in because it's not as tumultuous. I don't think the players like this too much either. I'll be honest with you. You build up friendships. You build up real relationships when you play college basketball with people, relationships that I still have to this day. And I wonder how some of these young men feel when it's just one of their teammates is taken, gone out of the locker room, boom, to a completely different school, completely different state, to a different league, or sometimes in the same league, which really sucks if you ask me. But then you sit there and say, just for dollars is how they disrupted this whole thing. And it's sad. It's sad. All right. So we're gonna give you Kentucky, the last one. They want to know, will Mark Pope piece things together? All right. I've talked to the people at Kentucky straight up a couple of times on this show. I'm going to give it to you straight up right now. You're in a really good place coaching-wise. I watched Mark Pope's BYU teams last year, and I had my pen and paper out. I was jotting down some of his stuff. I was trying to steal some of his plays. He's got good stuff. I think the people at Kentucky are now, hopefully, you're going to return to program integrity. Stop with all this craziness and build really good teams that will win championships, that will compete in the Final Four, and bring that great tradition back to Kentucky. Because as much as you had all of this and all of that and all the noise and all of the different stuff around your program, you got beat by Oakland, you got beat by St. Peter's in the NCAA tournament. And that was an absolute demolishment of some of your history and some of your traditions. You need to get back to that. Go back to what you believe in. Go back to what made you great in the first place. All right. Couple of things to close here, and then we're going to let everybody roll. The White House, we got a couple of good news. We'll close with a segment on the sled has slowed down. The sled has slowed down. All right, what I'm talking about is last week it was hot. I was saying it was probably a done deal with all the noise that was going around it, but for some reason, the Big 12 and UConn did not come to go time. And I'm very happy about that. I want to see UConn remain in the Big East. I really love UConn in the Big East. And football, it can't all be about football, folks. It can't always, every day, single day of the year in the NCAA, it can't be Groundhog Day about football. All right, you got to find a way to equalize the system. Got to find a way to do better. But right now, all you're doing is pushing all of these people to form football programs they don't want to have, they can't afford, and now you're going to penalize them for that as well. And I don't think that's cool. But they did slow the sled down on the Big 12 move, and that's good. And I'm happy about that. I think the Big 12 should stay right where they're at. They got enough teams. Overload with too many teams, and you're just going to make yourselves lack for relevance. I think the ACC has too many teams starting to lack for relevance as well. I really don't know where they go with it. I don't. But here's the last piece, and we're going to close with this, and this is a really cool piece. I think Danny Hurley is probably calling Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, Uncle Joe by now. Because Danny Hurley's been to the White House so many times in a row right now here, they're like family. So last week, South Carolina, the Lady Gamecocks, and also the Yukon Huskies went in to the White House for the ceremonial national championship celebration. Absolutely cool for Yukon Nation, absolutely cool for Husky Nation. At the same time, this is the piece of it that I love. At the same time, you saw Luke Murray, Danny Hurley, and their staff, Kamani Young and the rest of their staff out visiting players while they were down there, visiting with some of the great players that are down there, keeping their recruiting rolling and making sure that they're going to stay relevant for the future. So I thought that was an absolute, as much as they're invited to the White House and they're recruiting, because recruiting in college basketball is like breathing. You got to do it every single day if you want to survive. Folks, another hour. Ken Stormsky made it through the entire hour without even saying a word, I believe. He might have nodded his head. He might have said a few things over there, but I didn't even know Pete was in Tennessee when I came in today. So we adjust. We make our moves in the zone just like NBA players, and today was an absolute slam dunk. Kenny, thank you. Folks, thank you. We'll see you next week, because it's going to start to heat up here, folks, and you're going to want to be in the zone. See you next week.